Revelation 1854. From the 20th of March 1941. Danger of possession. Actual matter. Although matter is in constant change, it is not to be regarded as dissolved as long as it can still be useful in some way. Only when it is completely useless has the spiritual in it overcome it, and it often takes a very long time before it can leave the old form in order to fulfill new tasks in a new form. Thus the earthly course through matter is an unspeakably agonizing imprisonment of quite different duration for the spiritual, and the knowledge of this can determine the human being to shorten this state when everything is used to help the spiritual into service, because matter holds the spiritual in itself for an unspeakably long time, which is never allowed into service, which is therefore left unused as a dead possession. And it is now also understandable why the human being should not attach his heart to possessions, because the greater his love for the world's goods, the less opportunity it gives him to be of service. The spiritual in such unused matter is now condemned to inactivity against its will. It is ready to serve and is not allowed to do so, and suffers unimaginably as a result. If a person now lives in the vicinity of matter, which therefore has to remain inactive, this has an effect on the person's soul, which likewise falls into a certain inertia and does little to fulfill its task in life. If the soul were filled with the urge to be active, it would want to give and thus divest itself of its possessions, which would result in the immediate activity of the spiritual in matter and thus signify the beginning of redemption. But everything spiritual which is helped into activity helps the human being again for his own higher development, which is why it is considerably easier for a person to attain maturity of soul who is in the midst of constantly active matter. Thus increased earthly activity will at the same time favor the release of the banished spiritual, provided that what now arises is again useful to the human being. If idle matter is now destroyed by God's will, then this again means help for the spiritual in it insofar as it can now deform itself again elsewhere, and now the possibility exists to come into serving activity more quickly. Destructions of possessions force people to make use of such matter which has not yet been admitted to activity. And this is always advantageous for the spiritual in it. Thus increased possession is a danger, whereas the destruction of it, provided it is God-willed, can be a blessing for the unredeemed spiritual, which has declared itself willing to serve but was kept away from the serving purpose through human greed and love of matter. Then the outer shell is forcibly dissolved, the spiritual is released from it, but only in order to be banished anew in the form, but now finds more opportunity to serve, otherwise endless times can pass before it is allowed to serve. So many things come into being through human hands and human will that are completely useless and purposeless and are deprived of every serving function. Man should make it his business to help this spiritual substance by assigning some purpose to such useless things, so that matter will one day, even if after a long time, come to dissolution, for only through service will the spiritual substance in it become free. Amen.